Welcome to the Friday Happy Hour with victory strategist, award-winning author and your happy hour host, Annmarie Kelly. Each week, Annmarie chats with women who have reinvented, started over or wrote fabulous next chapters. They share how they overcame their midlife challenges and how you can too. So kick back with some good happy hour something to drink and enjoy today's show.
Welcome. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour with me, Annmarie Kelly, your midlife mentor and victorious woman power partner. This is the place where us victory chicks and you men who care about us meet on Fridays to chat about the week and find ways to live more powerfully and make our lives better. And thanks for coming today. And it's happy hour, so if you haven't already done it, pour yourself a drink and sit back and relax. Did you ever look up from your desk and wonder what it would be like to just take off and do something different? Well, Kelly Hayes-Raitt did, and she actually did something about it. Kelly was a political consultant for 30 years, and then she ran for office and lost her race. And after that, she decided to take a sabbatical. And what she's done and how she's done it will really make you think and maybe give you some good ideas. Well, we'll be chit-chatting with her today. And do you remember last week when I talked about the interviews with Anderson Cooper and his mother, Gloria Vanderbilt? I haven't read their new book yet, but I did watch the HBO documentary. In fact, I was so mesmerized by Gloria and Anderson and what Gloria revealed about her life that I watched it twice. What a life she had. Married 4 times by the time she was 40. The first time at 17 to an abusive spouse. The second time to a man who was 42 years older. He was the famous conductor, Leopold Stokowski. And it wasn't about money because, of course, she's a Vanderbilt and she had plenty of her own money. Or fame because she had more of that than she wanted. But in the documentary, Gloria Vanderbilt says that she wanted a father and Stokowski was it. Anderson Cooper's father was spouse number 4. And she was almost 40 when she married him. And she had Anderson's older brother at 42 and Anderson when she was 44. And that was in the mid-1960s. So today that wouldn't be so unusual because many women have their careers first and then they start having children. But back in the 1960s, that must have been something. But what fascinated me the most was listening to the 92-year-old woman reviewing her life. Do you ever do that? Do you ever think about reviewing your life, going over the different pieces of it? From the outside, to me, Gloria Vanderbilt's life could look very privileged and fascinating. I mean, not only the 4 spouses, but she had affairs with people like Frank Sinatra and Howard Hughes. And who could forget the jeans? I think every woman, young and old, had a pair of Gloria Vanderbilt jeans. Anderson Cooper said he and his brother used to play a game. Each day they would count how many times they saw their mother's name on some other woman's butt. Cute game for kids, huh? Yeah, Gloria Vanderbilt was still so stylish at 92. She said she had very low self-esteem. Now, you wouldn't think that, would you? And she had virtually no parents. Like her parents were almost non-existent in her life. Her father died when she was really young, and her mother was only 18 when she had Gloria, and she was kind of off being a jet setter. And Gloria was left in the care of the nursemaid that she called Dodo. Well, towards the end of the documentary, Gloria Vanderbilt said something that I'm starting to see as a pattern with older women. She said she has a lot of regrets. That regret theme keeps coming up with a lot of women who are older, in their 80s and 90s. And so many, in fact, Gloria had, at one time, she actually compiled a list of them. A list. Now, I don't think she's unusual that way, that she had regrets, but a whole list. And The first time I heard the whole regrets issue was from one of our happy hour guests. You might remember. I think she came in February. It was Barbara Wasserman. Do you remember her? She was a therapist, and she's had a midlife reinvention. But she's the woman who during our chit chat that day, Barbara explained that she'd been interviewing women at her mother's retirement community and discovered that they were all these women in their 80s and 90s filled with regrets. And not for the things they did, but for the things they didn't do. The regret at the top of Gloria Vanderbilt's list was not being with Dodo, that nursemaid, when she died. And that's a legitimate regret because, according to Gloria, Dodo was everything to her. She was there when her mother wasn't there, when her father wasn't there. She was mother, father, mentor, everything. Yet with all of her money and resources, Gloria let Dodo die alone and penniless and in the care of Catholic charities. Which I didn't know this. Gloria Vanderbilt was brought up in the Roman Catholic Church. But can you imagine that this woman who was everything to her, that she let her die penniless? I thought that was something. And now Gloria lives with the regret that what she said was that she was there when I was born, and I wish I had been there when she had died. I've been thinking a lot about regrets. If I end up living to be 92, I would think that there would be some things that I might regret, like if I was mean to somebody who didn't deserve it, or talked unkindly to somebody. But I don't want to have regrets about things I didn't do. I don't want to regret not traveling when I could have, or not taking a risk, or wondering what would have happened if only I had taken that risk. How about you? If you're in the 40 to 70 age group, you still have plenty of time to save yourself from those regrets. I know a woman who, at 93 and on her deathbed, was angry that her father wouldn't let her go to college. Now, I wondered why she didn't do that even in her 50s or 60s after her kids were raised. Yes, I know that it wouldn't have been so easy, but she could have done it. I did. You might remember me telling you that I didn't get my college degree until 2001, and that was just a few more years after I graduated high school. But Newman University had a program, and still does, that is perfectly suited to us midlifers. And these days you can do half your classes online, even if you don't even have to leave the house. So, having a college degree didn't change my life. It made me feel good. I was proud to have done it. And I graduated magna cum laude, and I love telling people that. But it wasn't the big benefit. You know what was? I'll tell you, if it wasn't for some of the people I met and the experiences I had, and for a particular instructor, Gloria Williams, I would not have written my first book. And all the things that have happened as a result of that book wouldn't have happened. It wasn't the college degree that made the difference. It was the doors that opened up in my mind because of the people I met. And, it doesn't have to be a college or MBA or anything overly educated if you want to do something different. Maybe you can take dance lessons. That would open up doors to a whole bunch of interesting people and things to do. Right here in Westchester, I love Valerie's on Westtown. She's in that group of stores at Westtown Road and Market Street, just above it. I would say she's just above the consignment shop. Or maybe you always wanted to play the guitar or piano or study a language or travel, and you didn't because you didn't have anyone to do it with. But these days there are groups for everything. Have you ever looked at those meetup groups? You can find a group for just about anything. And if it's not there, you can start one of your own. I posted a link to Meetup on today's radio wrap-up, and you can go take a look there. Or if you want to start a business, you can get started as a freelancer. Did you know that 34% of American workers are contract workers? It's 53 million people who have no regular steady job, and they do all kinds of work, like freelance kind of work, like writing for publications, construction, accounting, administrative jobs. And there are ad hoc companies all over the place for those. When I first started my business, I did that a couple of times a month while I was building my own training clientele. I worked for a company that did outplacement, and I worked for the Department of Defense and Government Services Administration. And I know one woman now who is a substitute teacher. She does it Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and maybe Thursdays. She loves it. Joanne Jenkins from the AARP wrote a book called Disrupting Aging, and I'm hoping that she'll come to Happy Hour in June or July. And I've been in touch with them, and I'm hoping we can get her book, because when she turned 50, she found herself subjected to so many negative stereotypes about midlife and beyond. And I'll bet she, like me, and maybe you too, can admit that there's a part of you that probably still feels like you're 22. All right, okay, maybe I'm the only 50-something who touches in with my inner 22-year-old, but 22 was such a good year for me that I really like going back there. Maybe it was for you 22, or maybe it was 27, or maybe it was 30 or 40. Whatever it is, Jenkins says all the negative stereotypes that come with age weigh on people's psyches so much that most people just give up and give in to aging. And she says, I don't want to be defined by my age. And I've grown a little tired of other people defining me that way. And geez, am I on the same page with her? How about you? Jenkins says that she won't allow outdated expectations of what people her age should do determine what she is going to do. And what she did was to look at people who were past 50 who were still finding new mountains to climb. If you want to do that, too, there are plenty of ways you can, and I hope that the women who join us for Happy Hour every Friday will help you shift your thinking. And if you aren't sure what you want to do, or you want to be with women who are on their own quest, come to my next No Regrets workshop this summer. And if you go on my Facebook page or sign up on my mailing list, and I put both of those links on today's radio wrap-up, you can join the Victorious Woman Committee and start living a No Regrets life. And today's guest is such a good example of someone who is still finding new mountains to climb. Kelly Hayes-Raitt is an activist and author. As a political consultant for 30 years, she worked tirelessly to protect women's rights, the environment, and consumers' rights. Then she ran for office, lost, and decided to take a sabbatical. And since then, she's invented her life 6 ways from Sunday. Wait till you hear some of the things she's done and is doing, where she's traveled, and how some of those experiences have prompted her to write a book called Living Large In Limbo, How I Found Myself Among the World's Forgotten. Kelly will tell you more about the book she's writing later, but first, we'll hear about her so interesting reinvention. So listen, go get some good happy hour something to drink, and come back with me and Kelly Hayes-Raitt. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour. Remember when you wished you had more time for yourself? And now you have it, but you notice you're keeping busy with stuff, but that stuff isn't making you feel happy or filled up? And when you think about what would make you happy and filled up, you get stuck or feel overwhelmed. And then you go back to what's more familiar, more comfortable, even if it's not making you happy. Wouldn't you love to find a way to start making sense of that deep discontent you're feeling? Well, you're not alone. I'm Annmarie Kelly, author, victory strategist, and the radio show host of the Friday Happy Hour. And I know there's a place for you, one that other women have found to be both inspirational and empowering, and it's the Victorious Woman Project. Go there now and get on my mailing list, where you'll be the first to know about my upcoming online workshops, teleseminars, and more. And while you're there, take a couple minutes to look over my blog. You can download some of the free stuff I have for you and let it get your creative juices going. I'm looking forward to meeting you at the Victorious Woman Project. And that's at www.victoriouswoman.com. Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. I'm your host, Annmarie Kelly, and our guest today is the woman who is living large in limbo, Kelly Hayes-Raitt. Kelly, how are you today?
I'm fine. Thank you very much for having me, Annmarie.
Oh, I'm glad that you were able to come. And you're calling in today, and you're calling from Mexico.
Yes, I am. I'm just south of Guadalajara.
Oh, that's wonderful. We'll get to how you ended up in Mexico in a couple of minutes. But listen, you were a political consultant for 30 years. What did you do?
I started out as a community organizer. I went door to door, kind of like President Obama. I went door to door as a fundraiser and a community organizer for a Ralph Nader organization that helped promote clean water policies in Washington, D.C. And from there, I started working on different campaigns. I moved to California and worked on political campaigns, statewide campaigns to promote women's rights, to help protect civil liberties, and to protect the environment.
So you said you moved to California. Where are you originally from?
I'm originally from Buffalo, but I moved to Washington, D.C., went to school there when I was 17, and then moved to Los Angeles when I was 19.
Interesting. Well, then you decided, after 30 years as a political consultant, you decided to run for office, and you say that you got your butt kicked. What happened?
Oh, I roundly got my butt kicked. I was running in a Democratic primary.
Kelly, it's so nice that you're that honest.
Well, it was a Democratic primary. Actually, 10 years ago in June will have been my election, the election day. And I was running against people that I knew that I'd worked with before, and the candidates were all very civil to each other, but the campaigns were not. And at one point I was seen as a front runner, and some of the other candidates' campaigns passed around some really nasty things about me, and I guess my skin was a little too thin. It was just really hard for me to deal with, and it felt like a real betrayal because these were people that I had worked with, had fought with and fought alongside, and people that I really knew quite well. So the betrayal really took the wind out of my sails. And I decided I was going to take a year off from politics. This was back in 2006 and 2007. And I decided to go to the Middle East and work with refugees and get their stories and bring them back to Americans. And that's what I started doing, and it just I found it to be more fulfilling, Annmarie, and so I moved more in that direction, and that's what sort of propelled my midlife makeover, if you will.
Mm-hmm. And what you've done, Kelly, is so out of the box that it just fascinates me. And what you told me earlier this week is that you didn't figure it out; it just evolved. So was the first step well, first of all, tell me, you're living large in limbo. What do you mean by that?
Well, it did just evolve. It wasn't something that I sat down and planned out, and I think that's a really important thing whenever anybody's in a position of wanting to make a change in their life, whether it's to come out of crisis, like a betrayal, or to just move into something that's more fulfilling. It's just to take the first step and see how that feels, and then move from there. You don't have to have the whole plan figured out in advance. For me, there were two key things that helped me out in this time of crisis when I wanted to take time away from my life. I had defined myself as a political activist, as a political spokesperson and commentator. That was my definition. That was what I did in life, and that was how I perceived myself, and that was where my self-esteem came from. So when I decided to move away from that and try to recreate something new, I was terrified. But these are the two things I did. The first was I sat down and thought, when recently...
Kelly, let me stop you there because it doesn't matter if you were a political consultant and that was your identity. My guest last week was a mom, and she said you so identify with your kids that when she went into her midlife reinvention, that was what her, you identify yourself as one thing. And you aren't only just that one thing. You weren't only a political consultant.
That's true. I wasn't, but that was the primary thing I did, and that was what I oriented my life around. Right. I mean, that's where my identity came from, my self-esteem, my finances, my place in the world, my friendships, my other relationships. I mean, it all came from that milieu. And when I decided to step away from that, even though my first decision was to step away just briefly, one of the things that I did was to sit down and to really think about when recently I had a time where I felt fulfilled. And for me, that was in 2003. It was right before I decided to run for office. I went to Iraq with a women's delegation just 5 weeks before the U.S.-led invasion. And I was very moved by the women that I met there who knew that war was coming. I mean, it was quite an emotional trip. I mean, women literally would stop us on the street and clutch our hands and beg us to go home and ask our president not to bomb them. It was a very emotional and personal trip for me. And I came home and I wrote up some of those stories for my local newspaper. And then I didn't think anything about it. I wrote the stories up. I did a series of speeches, speaking engagements throughout Southern California and really other parts of the country as well. And then I was running for office. And after I lost my campaign, my election, I realized that writing up those stories and being in Iraq at that provocative time had really provided a different outlet for me and had given me a different sense of satisfaction than I'd ever had before. And so I decided to see if I could recreate that experience. And so in 2007, in 2008, and 2009, I went back to the Middle East 7 times and worked with refugees and started writing their stories up and decided to put them together in a book. I'm almost done. I just have a couple of chapters to go, and I'm looking for an agent before the book can be published. But it's tentatively titled Living Large in Limbo, How I Found Myself Among the World's Forgotten. And it's about my experiences in the Middle East working with refugees. So that was the first thing I did, was to sit down and kind of think back, when did I do something different that really gave me a sense of satisfaction and a sense of involvement in the world that was different from what I had been doing. And that was it for me. The second thing I did...
Well, Kelly, let me stop you there for a second. That what you said earlier, you don't have to have it all figured out all at once. And so you really didn't. You just took it one step at a time. And it's what I was saying about when I went back to college as an adult. And it wasn't doing that. It wasn't getting my college degree, but all the doors that it opened up in my mind. And don't you find the same thing? That it shifts your thinking.
I really didn't think it through, though. I mean, that's the point that I'm trying to make, is that I just sort of did the first thing. I mean, I sat down and I thought about what had given me satisfaction or a sense of purpose. And then I just sort of moved from there, not knowing exactly what I was going to do with all of that. And then, saw what showed up. And for me, what showed up was the opportunity to write a book. And several chapters of my book have been published in different anthologies and literary journals. And I'm very excited about that because it's a chance for me to feel like I'm contributing in the world in a different way than I had in the past. So I really didn't overthink it. It was just, here's an opportunity over here. Let me say yes to that. Here's an opportunity over here. Let me say yes to that. Not all of them worked.
And so you didn't always have that nomadic spirit, did you? Or bohemian spirit. Let me say it that way.
Well, I mean, I've always loved traveling and being in different countries and immersing myself in different challenges, because traveling is I find very challenging in good ways. But when I was working on campaigns, I had to be home. I was a freelancer, as you talked about earlier, and I had to be home when people were hiring for campaigns so that I could have a job for the next year or 18 months. Otherwise, I'd be unemployed. I'd miss that season, if you will, and I'd be unemployed. So I didn't have that kind of flexibility when I had my life structured around that particular type of job. So the second thing that I did to try to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up was to sit down and really think about what assets I had, financial and otherwise. And for me at the time, my mortgage, I just bought a house about 6 years before, a single woman. I was 45 years old. I had this astoundingly huge mortgage. Still do, in Southern California. And so it was daunting for me to figure out how to come up with a mortgage every month.
Now, Kelly, before you tell us what you do, we have to take a break. And how you did that, I think, is just ingenious. So let's go away for a break. Everybody hang tight. And when we come back, we're going to hear Kelly's reinventions, the rest of Kelly's reinvention story. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour.
Hi, this is Annmarie Kelly, author, victory strategist, and the radio show host of the Friday Happy Hour. I trust you're enjoying my conversation with this fabulous, victorious woman. If you're getting inspired with ideas and feeling empowered, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's more for you. Tips, downloads, resources at the Victorious Woman Project. Go to victoriouswoman.com and look around and get on my mailing list so you can be the first to know about the newest good things I have for you. That's www.victoriouswoman.com. Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour.
I'm your host, Annmarie Kelly, and we're here with Kelly Hayes-Raitt. And Kelly, so tell me, so you started to talk about your house. So you knew you had to make a mortgage, so tell us what you did. This is so funny.
Initially, I was quite despairing over it. I mean, it's a huge mortgage. I had no income, nothing that I really wanted to do in terms of going back into the work that I had been doing, and wanting to launch into something different, but not knowing what that was. Mm-hmm. So I felt like I had this huge albatross around my neck, this strangling mortgage every month. When I realized that my house was an asset, and I really sat down to think about that, I realized I could rent the house out for income. And that's what I've been doing ever since then. So since 2009, I've been renting the house out full time. And then I live elsewhere for free. And I lived initially I lived in writing colonies where I was awarded writing residencies. But now I house sit and pet sit full time in other parts of the world. And Annmarie, what that's allowed me to do is to have the financial freedom, because my house is being rented, and then I've got freedom that I never, ever dreamt that I'd have to go live in other parts of the world. And as we mentioned at the top of the show, I'm calling you from Mexico. I'm in Ajijic, Mexico, where I've been living for the past 6 years. Every spring and fall for about half of the month. And I take care of Cha-Cha, a very rambunctious pit lab rescue dog, and take care of a home here. And it's a wonderful arrangement. And then when the homeowners are here, I go live elsewhere. This summer I'll be house sitting and dog sitting for 7 weeks in Hanoi, Vietnam. And at the end of the summer I'll be in Cardiff, Wales, in the UK, to repeat house sit. Last summer, I had 3 different house sits over 9 weeks in Malaysia, and then I also had a house sit in Japan that allowed me to visit Hiroshima and Nagasaki for the 70th commemoration of the atomic bombings of those cities.
That must have been something.
It really was for me because, part of my activism work, especially in the 1980s, was anti-nuclear work. And so for me it was almost a pilgrimage, frankly. Now I write a column for a local newspaper, a weekly newspaper in West Los Angeles, and these different political experiences that I have around the world give me an opportunity to infuse my column with sort of an international flavor. It's a local column, it's a local newspaper, but I can talk about it from a worldwide perspective and sort of broaden the ideas. And it's tremendously exciting for me, and I had no idea that was going to happen. When I sat down 10 years ago and said, I had that aha moment, that eureka moment, I can rent my house out for income. If anybody had said to me, 10 years from now, you'll be house sitting in Vietnam, I'd have gone, come on.
Yeah, really. Well, you know what, Kelly, how do you find the houses where you live?
I belong to a website called TrustedHouseSitters.com. And it's like Christmas, Annmarie, every day. I get 3 emails that list people from all over the world that are looking for house sitters to come and take care of their pets. And most of them are from the United States and from the UK and Australia. But there's many in Southeast Asia and in other parts of Europe and really throughout the world. And it's quite exciting to think about, wow, I could go there.
So it's TrustedHouseSitters.com.
That's right.
Now, do they check out the people in the house and the neighborhood, or what do you do? I would be scared to death, Kelly, to go to Malaysia or to go to almost any place and just plop myself down there and become part of the neighborhood.
Well, that's an excellent point, because it's not all a bed of roses. I've done house sits that I wouldn't go and repeat. Part of the house sitting experience for me over the last 8 years that I've been doing it is learning more about myself. what kind of place makes me in particular happy? It would be someplace different for you. It would be someplace different for many of our listeners. For me, for example, I like to be right in a city. I don't want to be in a suburb. I certainly don't want to be out in a rural area. I'm a city girl. I want to be able to walk to restaurants and walk to places. That's really important to me, but I didn't know that until I started house sitting. And being in some places where I felt a little more isolated, and I wasn't comfortable with that. Others really would be. So part of it for me has been a big self-assessment and a learning about what works for me and what doesn't, and then making sure that I ask questions of the homeowner to suss out that information, to make sure that it's going to be a happy match. It's like applying for a job, right? I mean, you ask about, a potential employer's work culture or their work hours or, the things that are important to you, and see if you're going to be a good match for them as much as they'll be a good match for you. I said that backwards. Sorry.
Yeah, but when you're pet sitting, how do you did you ever go to someplace and then the pet just didn't like you?
No.
It's like I would worry about that. I would think, well, what if I get there and then I've committed to this period of time and then the animal doesn't like me, whether it's a dog or a cat or.
I had pets that were more standoffish than friendly. But, just a little patience and a little care and a little love. And frankly, eventually they either come around or they don't, right? Most of the time they come around. And if they don't, it's not like this poor animal's locked into a bad relationship forever. I mean, their owners are going to get
true.
So, as long as they're well cared for, I give them all the love I have. And, and if that's still uncomfortable for them, I just let them be. It's my idea to keep it as unstressful as possible for them.
I'm curious about how you make yourself feel safe when you travel like that. Like in a neighborhood, you're there. You don't know what's going on in the neighborhood around you. And I'm thinking about Mexico. I've been to Mexico and really enjoyed the culture. But I hear so many stories about Mexico and the drug culture and the lack of safety. I have friends who lived there for many years, and they won't go back right now. So what is it like?
Well, I can talk about Mexico specifically in a second, but your broader question, I think, is a really good one. And it's not just about being physically safe. It's about being emotionally safe and psychologically safe and financially safe. And so those are all factors that I have learned to ask questions about of a homeowner and to wrap myself around that. So I ask about things like if they have household help, how trustworthy is that help? Am I going to have to worry about my electronics being stolen? Because I've had that happen here in Mexico, which is really a much more common thing that expats in this community experience, is having their home broken into and things stolen by either their household help or relatives of their household help.
Wow.
So that's something that's common. So, the way you work around that is you just don't, I don't want my computer on the day when everybody's here. So, there's ways to, and I hide my computer every single time I go out. So there's ways to work around that. That's not an issue in other countries, but it is particularly here in Mexico. But those are the things that I ask about. In terms of being emotionally safe, I ask questions about the neighbors and who I can go to if I have a problem or if I need extra help or if I need a break if I'm on a particularly long house sit. So I not only ask them to incorporate me in their friendships, but I also try to make my own friendships in places so that I can get out and have a life and enjoy myself. That's something that lends to my emotional and psychological enjoyment of the community that I'm in. And then in terms of financial safety, before I apply for a house sit, I do a lot of Google research. I find out how much the airfare is going to cost for me to get there, what the cost of living generally is, what the visa is going to cost. So I factor in all those things to see if it's really something that's a good, viable house sit for me.
What's the average amount of time that you have a house sit?
It really ranges. This one in Mexico, I've been here for as long as 5 months at a stretch, and I've house sat for as little as 5 days, actually, when I've been in between house sits and I've been in a community. And, so it just depends. I mean, when I was in Malaysia last year, for example, I had 3 weeks free, and then I found out about a week-long house sit in an area that I wouldn't have gone to in Malaysia. And so I decided to take it because I was already there in the country, and this was a place that I wouldn't have gone to. So it gave me a new experience. But I wouldn't have flown to Malaysia for a week-long house sit.
And I presume that they pay all your expenses when you're going to a house sit, yes?
They do not pay, generally speaking, homeowners do not pay travel expenses, but they pay for the household expenses.
Oh, okay.
So the utilities, if they have household help, that, my goal as a house sitter is to keep the routine going for the whole household, for the animals, for everything, so that it's when the homeowners leave and they return, there's been the least amount of disruption.
And do you have the same people renting your house in California? Like, do they always rent? The same people always rent, or do you have different people renting?
Well, sometimes. I started out doing vacation rentals, but I'm now moving to doing long-term rentals because it's just less work.
Oh, yeah, because if you have a vacation rental and they're only there for a couple of weeks, then you have to have somebody come in and clean up everything and make sure it's nice for the next people, huh?
Well, I did. I mean, I had a whole business going with a team, and that was working quite well. But so I'm just restructuring it now. But I think what's the important message to get out of this for our listeners is that there's a whole range of ways to organize our lives. I mean, a lot of people wouldn't feel comfortable having strangers staying in their home, and they wouldn't feel comfortable living in somebody else's home, and I get that. And part of it is I had to deal with my own self. I had to train myself to be comfortable on both those things. But some people it wouldn't be comfortable for them. But there are other ways to do it. There are other ways to look at the things that we think are just these heavy weights in our lives, and say, okay, how can I make this an asset? And for me, that's been the exciting challenge. And as I've done that reflection and done that work on myself, this whole new life has evolved, and it's still evolving. I'm still, finishing my book up, and there are doors that are opening through completing the book. That's very exciting. And I am living the best time I have ever had in my life. I'm 54, I'm single, I'm having a ball.
Kelly, that's really awesome. It's wonderful to be in your 50s and having that kind of an experience. Listen, we have to take a break, but when we come back, let's talk about your book.
Okay.
And everybody get ready for that because it's going to be an experience. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour. Are you one of those women who lived the first part of your life as a really good girl? That is, you did all the right things and followed all the so-called rules for women. I was like that, too. But have you noticed that once you passed 40, you have less patience for those rules? Maybe you even think that the rules really don't make sense for you anymore. Maybe they never did, and you just didn't realize it. Do you want to go where other recovering good girls meet to inspire each other and support their new empowered selves? Then join me, Annmarie Kelly, and some very fabulous victorious women. We're on Facebook at the Victorious Woman Project. So go to facebook.com/Victorious Woman Project. I'll talk to you there. Back to the Friday Happy Hour. I'm Annmarie Kelly, and I'm here with Kelly Hayes-Raitt. And Kelly, my friend Marion is here with me, and she wanted to know what makes people need a house sitter. Is it security? Is it continuity? Is it,
Sure. What most people want in a house sitter is someone to take care of their pets, to love their pets, to feed them, to walk them, to groom them, to provide medicines for them if that's necessary. Somebody that will take care of their pets, take care of their home so that they can go away on holiday or work or whatever with a good peace of mind. I wanted to just riff for a minute on that really cool commercial that came out, that public service announcement about recycling. Mm-hmm. And I was listening to all those little kids saying what they wanted to be when they grew up, not what occupation they wanted to be, which is such an interesting little twist. And I got to thinking to myself, what would I want to be when I grow up, right, if I were a thing, rather than an occupation. And for me, it would be a great book, something that somebody could hold in their hands and read and enjoy and be inspired by and then pass forward. But the recycling message is so important. I just got done doing an article on this. Do you know that the average American home has 300,000 items, and that Americans spend more on shoes, jewelry, and watches than on higher education?
Oh, my goodness. No, I didn't know that. That's a little amazing.
But that commercial, that PSA just lends itself for, and I just researched that information.
But, Kelly, that's so interesting. So you'd want to be a book.
I'd want to be a book. What would you have?
I'm going to be thinking about that all day. Well, listen, speaking of a book, let's talk about yours. So on your website, you say that it's a political eat, pray, love. What does that mean?
Well, my website is www.livinglargeinlimbo.com. And, we read Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Eat, Pray, Love, about her journey to kind of reinvent herself by traveling around the world and experiencing different things, great food and language, spiritual enlightenment, and an opportunity to deepen her spiritual understanding. And my book is like that in spirit, but it's much more political. I don't go to Italy and India and Indonesia. I go to Iraq and Syria and the West Bank and Lebanon, working specifically with war refugees and trying to understand what it feels like to lose absolutely everything. I mean, I was feeling so despondent after I lost my campaign. It was just an election. It was just a few friends backbiting me. It was nothing like the people that I experienced who've lost their homes, family members, limbs, jobs, self-esteem, their culture, their neighborhood, everything that they know and is familiar.
A whole different perspective, huh?
Yes, and then they leave, and then they rebuild themselves. And to be in the presence of that kind of resilience was extremely, and continues to be extremely healing and humbling for me. So my book is about my experiences there and about my healing is kind of too wooey of a word, but, it's about my healing and recovery, if you will, from my midlife loss by working with people who had successfully confronted losses that were far, far, far more tragic than anything I will ever experience in my life.
Wow. Yeah, it does. It makes you rethink a lot of things from, like that there are sometimes when we think, oh, it's like devastating, and then you see someone who is really devastated, and then you think, this is
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And to hold that perspective is an extraordinary experience, I think, for especially Americans to do. I just was very humbled by the people who shared their stories with me. And so that's what infuses the book. And again, my website is www.livinglargeinlimbo.com. And if any of our listeners are interested in learning more about my book or me or my travels, there's a little sign-in box there, and you can just sign in with your email address. And periodically, and by periodically I mean maybe twice a year, I send out an update on what's happening with my book and with my travels, just to keep people apprised. And once my book comes out, it will be that list that will get a pre-publication discount.
And I put that, your Living Large in Limbo website, on the radio wrap-up for today, so my listeners know about the radio wrap-up. And I thought it was interesting, there was a YouTube, you did some interview someplace, and it was posted on YouTube, so I posted that too, so people could get a look at you.
Oh, good, thank you.
You're welcome.
You asked me a question earlier that I didn't answer, and that was, what does it mean to live large in limbo? And I hate being in limbo. I hate not knowing, having one foot in the past and not knowing where that other foot's going to land. And I think a lot of people feel that way as well, that limbo is just one of the most uncomfortable experiences for us. And since I lived a good part of this transition in that space, I think the idea of living large, taking advantage of that interstitio, if you will, of that gap to say, oh, I could put my foot over here or over here or over here, or I could try all three places and see what goes, and look at that as an advantage rather than the uncomfortable situation that we often view it as.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's an interesting perspective on that, Kelly. I like it. Yeah.
Thank you.
You have probably I'm just trying to see if I think that we don't have time to hear your story, how long will it take you to tell the beggar in Iraq story?
It's about 3.5 minutes.
Okay, we won't have time to talk about it, but people can keep in touch with you on your website at livinglargeinlimbo.com, and we're going to have to say goodbye to you, but thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you. Ours too. Have a good weekend.
You too.
And for all of you who are listening, we're ready to wrap up today. But before we go, do you remember last week when I did the Comcast Newsmaker spot? Well, it'll air in May, but it's on today's radio wrap-up, so you can take a look at my cute self and let me know what you think. And we're only about 6 weeks away from this year's Girlfriend Gala. Now, we're getting some wonderful silent auction and raffle items. People's Light and Theater Company gave us a couple of tickets, and Winterthur is sending us tickets. Danecraft Jewelry sent us several pieces of smart and savvy jewelry, and there's a place called Summer Nights. You might have heard me talk about it. It's that bed and breakfast in North Wildwood that I talked about it last November. That's the one where Joseph wanted to stay in the Elvis Presley room, and that room had big pictures of Elvis Presley and gold lame love seats, and it was just too much for me. I told Joseph, I said, you can either have Elvis or you can have romance, but the two of them aren't happen in the same room. So as a result, we ended up staying in the Frankie Avalon and the Net Funicello room. And so it's an awesome bed and breakfast, and its owner, Sheila, who greets us in the morning for breakfast in a poodle skirt with, you remember that Laverne shirt from Laverne and Shirley? So she has a poodle skirt and a Laverne shirt, and that's how she serves breakfast. So she said it's really a lot of fun. So she's donating a night's stay, which is really nice. So, and I'll tell you more as we get closer. But if you want to join me and the girlfriends and Pat Cherokee and Teresa Hummel-Kralinger, it's May 25th from 5:30 to 8:30 at Penn Oaks Golf Club. So you can get tickets now, and it's still in the early bird discount rate. And you can get that link on the radio wrap-up today, or you could just go right to victoriouswoman.com. There's a space for that there. And next week I'll tell you more about the free 21-day Victory Challenge that will start in May, because May is International Victorious Woman Month. So you and I can do that 21-day Victory Challenge together. And also there's the Victorious Woman Writing Contest, where you can tell me your story. And I know every woman has a story. So I would like to hear it, and then we have gifts. We have prizes that go with that. So I want to thank my friend Marion, who's joined me in the station today. We're heading out now for happy hour, and I'm looking forward to having a little alcohol. So, because you can drink when we chat on Fridays, but the FCC sort of frowns upon me doing that. So I have to wait, but Marion and I will be tipping a little in maybe 15 minutes. And to all my Jewish listeners, Passover starts in a couple hours, and I wish you a happy Passover. And to everyone who didn't get your income taxes done today, aren't you glad you have until Monday to get them done? But I don't envy you a stressful weekend of numbers. We just did that. Our accountant does it, and he called us the other day and told us what we owe and, all that kind of stuff. And we had to make sure the money was in our SEPs, and it was just so much last-minute stuff. I hope whoever gets elected this next time chooses a flat tax or whatever those new taxes are, because this income tax stuff every year just makes me a little crazy. So I want to leave you with a quote from Goldie Hawn about aging. And she said, "You have to truly grasp that everyone ages, everyone dies. There is no turning back the clock. So the question in life becomes, what are you going to do while you're here?" Victory chicks and you guys, that's always the question. What are you going to do while you're here? Think about that this weekend.
and make it a victorious weekend. And come back with me, Annmarie Kelly, next Friday for the Friday Happy Hour. Jen's on.
All of my friends tell me that I'm a good girl, yet they do. They all see me as being so perfect, they don't make goody two-shoes. If I do something a little risque, they all gasp and I just say, good girl, wanna get crazy sometimes too. They wanna shake off their halo, pick up their heels and let their wild side show. Good girls don't wanna get crazy sometimes too. Try to be the good girl mama raised me up to be, but sometimes breaking all the rules sounds mighty good to me. Like going where I don't belong, rocking until the break of dawn. Good girls wanna get crazy sometimes too. They wanna shake off their halo, kick up their heels and let their wild side show.
Thanks for listening to this Friday Happy Hour. Make sure you subscribe, rate and review today's show. And join us again next week for the Friday Happy Hour with Annmarie Kelly.